I don't know when exactly things started to feel off. Maybe it was when Stephanie started coming home later than usual, claiming she had extra work piling up. Maybe it was the way she'd tuck her phone under her pillow at night when she used to leave it charging on the nightstand. Or maybe it was just something deeper, something instinctive, telling me that the woman I had built my life with wasn't really here anymore. We had been together for almost 8 years, married for 5. I used to think we were the couple that had it figured out. Comfortable but still affectionate, still making time for date nights, still laughing at stupid inside jokes. She was my best friend before she was my wife, and I thought that was enough to keep us strong. But now, there was a distance between us that I couldn't put into words. Conversations felt forced. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. And when I touched her, she tensed up ever so slightly before relaxing again, like she had to remind herself to play the part. I tried to push the thoughts away, told myself I was being paranoid. Work had been stressful for her, and she was exhausted. Relationships go through phases, right? But then the lies started. Little ones at first. She said she was grabbing dinner with coworkers, but when I asked which restaurant, she hesitated. Said she couldn't remember the name. Another night, she claimed she was too tired for intimacy, but when I woke up at 2 a.m., she wasn't in bed. She was out on the balcony, whispering into her phone. I should have confronted her right then. Should have asked her why she sounded guilty. But I didn't. Instead, I watched. I waited. And I started putting the pieces together. Something was going on. And I was going to find out what. I started paying closer attention. Not in an obvious way, just enough to notice the patterns I had been blind to before. Stephanie had always been predictable. A creature of habit. She got coffee at the same place every morning, took the same route to work, even folded the laundry in a way that never changed. But now she was full of inconsistencies. One night, she said she was stuck in a late meeting, but when I checked her location on the family tracking app, something we both used regularly, her PIN wasn't at her office. It was across town near a small hotel. The location jumped again minutes later, suddenly showing her on the road. She must have realized the app was on and turned off her location tracking. Another time, she went to take a shower and left her phone on the couch. It was locked, of course, but a message popped up from a number with no name. Just a single text. Can't wait to see you again. Same time. I felt my stomach twist, but I played it cool. When she came back, wrapped in a towel, I casually asked, "Hey, someone texted you. No name saved. Who is it?" Her face didn't change. She just grabbed her phone, glanced at the screen, and shrugged. Wrong number, I guess. Then, just like that, she deleted the text. I should have said something then. Should have called her out. But part of me, maybe the stupid, hopeful part, wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that I wasn't seeing what I was seeing. But the real breaking point, that happened the night I found the dress. Stephanie had always been stylish, but this dress wasn't something she would ever wear around me. It was tucked in the back of her closet, something sleek, black, and way too expensive for an office dinner. And then, I saw the receipt crumpled in the bag. The date was recent, just last week. The same week she told me she was exhausted from work. The same week she had been coming home late, dodging my questions, barely looking me in the eye. That was when I knew. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't crazy. Something was happening. And it was time to stop waiting. I didn't confront her right away. No, that would have given her the chance to lie again, to gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. Instead, I planned. I needed proof. Not just for me, but for my own sanity, because some part of me still wanted to be wrong. I wanted this to be some kind of misunderstanding, even though deep down I already knew the truth. So I bought a small hidden camera. Nothing too fancy. Just something I could discreetly place in our bedroom. If she was meeting someone, if she was bringing him here, I'd have my answer. And if not, well, at least I could say I tried. The waiting was the hardest part. I started keeping track of her schedule, noting the days when she seemed the most eager to leave. Friday nights, mostly. That was when she came home wearing perfume that wasn't for me, with a tired but satisfied look on her face, claiming she had been out with coworkers. Then, one Thursday night, She casually mentioned she had an important client dinner after work the next day and might be home late. That was all I needed. I called in sick to work Friday morning and spent the day setting things up. The camera was hidden well, tucked behind a row of books on the shelf, angled just right to see the bed. But I didn't stop there. I left something for her. A small envelope, carefully placed on the bed, right in plain sight. Inside was a single piece of paper. I know. No name.
No accusations.
Just 2 words. Then I left. I parked down the street, close enough to still connect to the camera feed through my phone. And I waited. At exactly 7:42 p.m., she came home. Not alone. The man who followed her inside was someone I recognized. Someone I never should have had to recognize. My best friend. I stared at the screen, my fingers gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. There they were. Stephanie and my so-called best friend, Jason. Walking into my home like they had done nothing wrong. Like this was just another casual Friday night. She laughed at something he said, her body language so natural, so comfortable. Like they had done this before. Many times. Jason tossed his keys on the nightstand, stretching like he belonged here, like my marriage, my life, was just a side plot in whatever fantasy they were living. And then Stephanie saw the envelope. I watched as she froze mid-step, her whole demeanor shifting in an instant. Jason frowned, watching her as she reached for it with trembling fingers. She tore it open and pulled out the note. I know, that was it. Just those 2 words. But they hit her like a gut punch. What's wrong? Jason asked, stepping closer. He tried to peek at the paper, but she yanked it away, stuffing it into her purse like hiding it would make it go away. She started looking around the room then, eyes darting over the furniture, the shelves, the walls, searching for something. She knew. She knew I was watching. Something's not right, she muttered. Jason rolled his eyes. Steph, come on. You're being paranoid. But she wasn't. Not this time. She turned toward the bookshelf, scanning the spines of the books, and for a second, I thought she might find the camera. My heart pounded in my chest. Then, before she could move any closer, there was a knock at the door. A loud, sharp knock. She whipped around, and I watched her panic kick into high gear. Jason frowned. Are you expecting someone? No, she whispered. Another knock, louder this time, and then, the voice that shattered everything. This is the police. Open up. I had never seen her move so fast. She stumbled back, her hands shaking as she turned to Jason with wide, terrified eyes. What did you do? She hissed, voice low and urgent. Me? He shot back. I didn't do anything. What the hell is going on, Stephanie? But I knew, because I was the one who called them. I had given them the tip earlier that day. A concerned husband reporting suspicious activity. Someone using my home while I was away, possibly in possession of illegal substances. A fabricated story, but enough to warrant a visit. Enough to make her squirm. The knocking turned into pounding. And just like that, the perfect little world she thought she controlled started crumbling around her. Stephanie's hands were shaking. Jason looked like he was trying to do the math in his head, piecing together how a secret affair turned into cops knocking on the door. I could see it all through the camera. Stephanie pacing, her breath coming in quick gasps. Jason checking his pockets like he had something to be worried about. Maybe he did. Maybe my little tip wasn't so far from the truth. Another pound at the door. Police! Open up now or we're coming in. Stephanie bolted toward the door, smoothing her hair down as if that would make her look innocent. She took one last frantic glance at Jason before unlocking it and swinging it open. Officers, she started, her voice breathy, high-pitched. What's going on? The officer in front, tall, no nonsense, with that bored but dangerous expression cops get when they already know they have the upper hand, gave her a slow once-over before stepping inside. We received a report of unauthorized activity happening in this home. Would you mind if we take a look around? Jason, ever the idiot, stepped forward like he could still salvage this. Whoa, what kind of report? Who called you? The officer didn't even glance at him. Instead, he turned his gaze directly to Stephanie. A man called in. Said he had reason to believe someone was using his home while he was away. A beat. Then, you wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Stephanie's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. This is my house. I live here. The officer nodded like he already knew that. And him. He gestured toward Jason. I wish I could have taken a picture of her face at that moment. The sheer panic. The mental scrambling. The way her lips parted. Her breath caught in her throat. He's a friend, she said finally, her voice weak. Jason turned to her sharply. Just a friend? Are you kidding me? Trouble in paradise. Beautiful. The officer wasn't done. We're gonna have to ask you both to stay put for a moment. He turned to another cop behind him. Search the place. Stephanie practically choked. Wait, what? You can't just. Ma'am, we have probable cause. And with that, they started looking. Not that they'd find anything, of course. I wasn't stupid enough to plant anything illegal. But that wasn't the point. The point was that this was the beginning of the end for her. Stephanie kept darting panicked glances at Jason, but he was already stepping away from her, arms crossed, clearly realizing that this was going downhill fast. Then one of the officers called out from the bedroom. Hey, Sarge, you might want to take a look at this. Stephanie's breath hitched. I watched as the lead cop strode into the bedroom, disappearing from view. A tense silence stretched. And then, he walked back out, holding up the envelope I had left on the bed. He turned it over in his hands, then pulled out the note. He read it slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he lifted his gaze back to Stephanie. Seems like someone already knows what's going on here. Stephanie's entire body stiffened. Jason was the first to react. He turned to her, his face twisting in realization. What the hell does that mean? He demanded. Who knows? She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because she knew. She knew it was me. Stephanie's whole body went rigid. Her hands clenched so tight I thought she might snap. Jason was staring at her, waiting for an answer. The cops were watching, waiting for any excuse to press further. And me? I was parked down the street, watching it all unfold on my phone, feeling the cold satisfaction settle deep in my bones. Jason took a step closer to her, his voice low and tense. Stephanie, what is going on? She licked her lips, looking around like an animal trapped in a cage. It's nothing. It's a prank, she blurted out, shaking her head. A stupid joke. Jason wasn't buying it. Neither were the cops. The lead officer folded his arms. Ma'am, do you want to explain why you're here alone with this man while your husband is nowhere in sight? Stephanie's face twisted like she was trying to find the right words, but none came. Jason, finally connecting the dots, let out a bitter laugh. Wait, no way. No freaking way. He turned to her, his expression darkening. Your husband did this, didn't he? Stephanie swallowed hard. Jason ran a hand through his hair, muttering under his breath. Then he turned back to her, voice sharp. You told me he was distant, that he didn't care anymore. You lied. There it was. The first crack in their little fantasy. Stephanie opened her mouth, but before she could say a word, the officer spoke again. Ma'am, we need to contact your husband and confirm that he's aware of this situation. I could see the panic set in now. She knew the moment they called me it was game over. He's traveling, she stammered. He's not available. The officer didn't look convinced. We'll still need to make the call. Stephanie's hands were shaking. She knew I was watching. She knew I was already ahead of her. Jason had enough. He turned, grabbed his jacket, and let out a sharp breath. You know what? I'm done. He shook his head, looking her up and down like she was a stranger. You said you had this under control, but clearly you don't. Stephanie grabbed his arm, her voice desperate now. Jason, please. But he yanked away.
No.
I'm not going down with you. And with that, he stormed out the door, shoving past the officers without a second glance. Stephanie stood frozen in place, her world collapsing around her. And me? I smiled. I started my car. It was time to go home. I took my time driving back home.
No rush.
Stephanie was already unraveling, and I wanted her to sit with that feeling for a little while longer. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the cops had already left. They had no real reason to stay once Jason walked out and nothing illegal was found. That wasn't the point. Anyway, the point was to shake her up, to make her feel powerless. And it worked. When I stepped inside, she was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, her fingers gripping the crumpled envelope like it might disappear if she held on tight enough. The moment she heard the door close, she snapped her head up. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and desperate. "You," she whispered. I didn't say anything, just stood there, letting the silence stretch. She swallowed hard, then shot up from the couch, rushing toward me. "Listen, I can explain." I stepped back, and just like that, she froze mid-step, realization dawning on her face. I wasn't here to listen. Stephanie's breathing quickened. "Please, just talk to me. It's not what you think." I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head. "Not what I think?" I gestured toward the bedroom. "You brought him here, to our home." Her lips trembled, and for a second, I thought she might cry. Maybe she wanted to. Maybe she thought it would work. But she must have seen something in my face that told her I wasn't falling for it. Her expression shifted. Less pleading. More calculating. "This is your fault too, you know," she said, her voice colder now. "You've been distant. You haven't been the same." I felt alone. I stared at her, my jaw tightening. There it was. The shift from guilt to blame. The desperate attempt to rewrite history. I took a slow step closer, lowering my voice. "You could have talked to me. You could have told me you weren't happy. But instead, you lied. You snuck around. You disrespected our home." She exhaled sharply, crossing her arms. "So what? You're perfect? You've never done anything wrong." I let out a breath, shaking my head. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about me." Her face twisted with frustration. "So what happens now?" I let the question hang between us. I could see her mind racing, trying to predict my next move. Was I going to kick her out? File for divorce immediately? Beg her to stay like some broken-hearted fool? I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to feel the weight of my words. "Now," I said, "now, you get to watch everything fall apart." Her face paled, and I walked past her, heading straight to the bedroom. I had a few more things to take care of before the real consequences started rolling in. I didn't pack a single bag, not because I planned on staying, but because I wasn't the one who would be leaving. Stephanie followed me into the bedroom, her voice frantic now. "Wait, what do you mean by that?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled for a second, and then turned the screen toward her. Her face twisted in confusion at first. Then her eyes widened in horror. It was a text, sent to her parents, her closest friends, and even a few of our mutual ones. A simple message. "Hey everyone, I just wanted to get ahead of things. Stephanie and I will be separating. Unfortunately, I recently discovered she's been having an affair with Jason, and I thought you all deserved to know the truth before she had the chance to twist it. Thanks for your support." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She grabbed for my phone like she could somehow take it all back, but I stepped out of reach. "Why would you?" "Because you don't get to control the story." My voice was calm, measured. "You don't get to spin this into some sad little tale where you were the victim. You did this. Own it." She inhaled sharply, shaking her head in disbelief. "You don't have to do this. We can fix this." I actually laughed. Quiet, bitter laugh. "Fix this?" I gestured between us. "Stephanie, I don't even recognize you anymore." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. I turned back to my phone and sent another message, this time to our landlord. A simple request to remove Stephanie from the lease. She saw it. "You can't do that." I looked at her, tilting my head. "Why not? I was the one paying rent. You were the one sneaking around." Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no argument. Her breath hitched. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged. That's not my problem. I saw something break in her then. The realization that I wasn't playing her game. That she had lost. I grabbed my keys, walking toward the door. You have until the end of the week, I said without turning around. After that, I'm changing the locks. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't need to, because for the first time in months, I was the one in control. And it felt good. Stephanie didn't fight me after that. Not really. Oh, she cried. She begged. She cycled through every possible reaction. Anger, guilt, blame, desperation. But none of it mattered. I had already made my decision. By Monday, she was gone. She didn't even bother trying to take much with her. Just a couple of suitcases and whatever dignity she had left. I never asked where she went. I didn't care. Jason, he tried reaching out. Left a few voicemails, mostly filled with awkward half-apologies and pathetic attempts to justify what he did. I didn't respond. He wasn't worth my time. But karma? Karma worked fast. Word spread quickly, thanks to the message I sent, of course. Our mutual friends dropped her one by one. Her parents were beyond disappointed. Her job got wind of the situation, and suddenly, the perfect little image she had built for herself started to crumble. And Jason, turns out his wife found out too. Filed for divorce within a week. Took the house, the car, and half his savings. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. As for me, I felt lighter, like I had been carrying a weight I hadn't even noticed until it was gone. The pain was still there, of course. Betrayal like that doesn't just disappear overnight. But it didn't define me. I moved forward, took my time, focused on myself. And for the first time in years, I wasn't worried about what my wife was doing behind my back. Because she was no longer my wife. And I was finally free.